Hello, welcome back to Beyond Words with Sayanta Paul, the podcast where literature becomes a way of understanding ourselves and the world around us. So here I am Sayanta Paul with you, and I am delighted to have you with me. Today's worlds move at an astonishing pace. We scroll through hundreds of posts in minutes, consume news in seconds, and often judge ideas before we have had time to truly think about them. Everything seems designed to make us faster. But poetry asks us to do something radically different. It asks us to slow down. At first glance, poetry may seem old fashioned in the age of smartphones, artificial intelligence, and endless notifications. Some people even wonder whether poetry still matters. I believe it matters now more than ever. Because poetry is not just about rhyme or beautiful language, it's about attention. When a poet sends 10 lines describing a single flower, a lonely street, or one fleeting emotion, they are reminding us that life is made meaningful by the moments we usually overlook. Poetry teaches us to notice the way sunlight falls through a window, the silence after a difficult conversation, the memories hidden in an old photograph, the hope that survives even after disappointment. These are experiences that can't always be measured or explained, but they can be felt. And poetry gives language to those feelings. Think about the poems that have stayed with people for generations. They don't survive because they're complicated. They survive because they speak to something deeply human. Love, loss, hope, fear, wonder. Across centuries and cultures, poetry has helped people express what ordinary conversations often can't. In many ways, poetry is one of humanity's oldest companions. Long before printed books, poems were spoken aloud around fires, remembered through song, and passed from one generation to the next. Poetry carried history, beliefs, dreams, and identity. Even today, when everything feels temporary, a few carefully chosen words can remain with us for years. There is the quiet power of poetry. Reading poetry also changes the way we think. Unlike many forms of writing that aim to explain everything, poetry leaves a space for imagination, a space for interpretation, a space for the reader to participate. Every reader discovers something slightly different, and that is part of poetry's beauty. There is not always one perfect meaning. Sometimes the meaning grows alongside us. A poem you read at 16 may feel completely different when you read it again at 30. Not because the poem had changed, but because you have. For writers, poetry is equally powerful. It transforms confusion into reality, pain into expression, questions into possibility. A blank page becomes a place where emotions can breathe without fear of judgment. Perhaps that's why so many people write poetry during life's most significant moments. When they fall in love, when they lose someone, when they dream, or when they're simply trying to understand themselves. Poetry reminds us that vulnerability is not weakness, it is honesty, and honesty has always been at the heart of great literature. So, in a world that constantly tells us to hurry, perhaps poetry offers the courage to pause, to observe, to reflect, to listen, not only to the voices around us, but also to the quiet voice within ourselves. Maybe that's why poetry has never disappeared. Technology evolves, societies change, empires rise and fall. Yet poetry continues to find readers because the human heart continues to search for meaning. Before we end today's episode, I would like to leave you with a simple thought. The next time life feels overwhelming, don't immediately reach for another distraction. Instead, read a poem. or write on. You may discover that a few sincere lines can say what thousands of hurried words never could. So, thank you for listening to Beyond Words with Shantapal. If this episode resonated with you, please follow the podcast, leave a rating, and share it with someone who believes that literature still has the power to change lives. Until next time, keep reading, keep wondering, and remember, sometimes the slowest words leave the deepest impact. I am Shantapal, and this has been Beyond Words. See you in the next episode. Thank you so much.